Welcome to Wall Street Unspun with your host, Peter Schiff.
But it's a giant bubble in search of a pin, and it's going to find one.
Are you confused with the ups and downs in the economy and what it means to you?
Don't believe the propaganda, and that's what it is. When you're listening to an analyst on a lot of these popular financial shows, you're not getting investment advice. You're getting propaganda.
Get ready to untangle the web of misinformation provided by the mainstream media.
These firms are trying to sell you stocks. Their real clients, their banking clients, are trying to get rid of stock.
And now, here's your host of Wall Street Unspun, the president of Euro Pacific Capital and a licensed broker with a passion for truth. It's Wall Street Unspun with Peter Schiff.
Hey, everybody. Welcome again to another live episode of Wall Street Unspun, Midweek Market Outlook. I am Peter Schiff, host of your show, coming to you live as I do most Wednesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time on my website, www.europac.net, and on shortwave 5.07 megahertz. And also, of course, the podcasts are available of these shows on our site. You know, I have to apologize. It is taking longer than it used to get these things up because of the added compliance that we have. We're now, making sure that the shows are reviewed in their entirety by the compliance department prior to being up there. So if there is any kind of delay, it's generally routine. I mean, generally there's nothing, in fact, there's never anything, that we find, but just so we can, show the regulators that we have had a compliance person review the show prior to it being archived or put up on the site. So that's the reason for the delay if it's happening. So I have to apologize, but unfortunately, that is the highly regulated world in which I operate. And I have a feeling that the regulations are going to get much, much worse as the government cracks down further on the service industry, of which I happen to be a participant. Anyway, the number to call, 888-678-9597, 888-678-9597. The reason I am actually doing this show myself live today from my home in Weston is because we had a snowstorm, and the snowstorm canceled the Republican Town Committee meeting that I was supposed to be speaking at this evening, and so I am able to do the show. Anyway, a lot of stuff, of course, has been going on in the past week in the news. Again, we continue to focus attention on problems in Europe, particularly sovereign debt problems for Greece, which is a country that has a debt to GDP ratio north of 100%, and they are having problems in the bond market because potential buyers are nervous about the size of the debt and the percentage of debt to GDP and the eventual problem that Greece might have in paying its debts. Because remember, none of these countries in the European Union can print euros. They're basically like states in that if they borrow money, they have to pay it back either by raising taxes or cutting spending. And if they can't do either, they don't have the option of simply printing money, which is really, it shouldn't be something that people look at with some kind of as a positive. It's actually a negative. But the only alternative to a inflationary default is a more honest traditional default where you simply don't pay. And certainly many nations have defaulted on their debt, and creditors have been burned. And the amazing thing about the whole focus is the lack of attention on the same issues that exist here in the United States. But we all think that, well, it's not a problem with America because America doesn't have to default. America can print. But, that doesn't do our creditors any good if we pay them back with worthless money. And so it is a benefit. We can't not worry about sovereign risk in America because we've got a printing press and Greece does not. But the more important issue is what will the European Union do? And, of course, the political pressure is there, just like it is here, to bail them out. Because obviously, in the short run, the problems with Greek credit is causing problems throughout Europe. It's putting downward pressure on the euro, and there is pressure on politicians to do something to bail out Greece so that Greek politicians don't have to make the tough choices, and so that there isn't a potential short-term problem for other banks throughout Europe that might have been holding on to Greek government debt, just like banks were in trouble who were holding on to bad mortgage debt. But, of course, I think the best thing for Europe, the best thing for the euro in the long run, I mean, certainly in the short run, who knows, but in the long run, the best thing for euro is for the governments to not intervene and for Greece to resolve these problems on its own, either by making the necessary cuts in government spending to instill confidence in creditors, or Greece to actually default and put the losses on the creditors. Either way, I think it's better than the government coming in and bailing them out, because the overriding problem there is the moral hazard that is created in the process. You create a moral hazard on both sides, from both borrowers and lenders. You send a message to Greece that they can keep being irresponsible, that there is no cost. If they get into trouble, they will be bailed out. You send messages to other European countries that, hey, why should we act responsibly? Why should we tell the voters no? Why don't we make empty promises and run up deficits? Because, again, we'll get bailed out. And the message that you send to lenders is, don't worry about how much debt a country has. Just keep lending them money anyway. Don't impose any fiscal discipline. You're telling the bond market vigilantes that they don't need to be vigilant, because bad debt is just as good as good debt. No matter which country you lend to, no matter how fiscally irresponsible, you're going to get your money back. And so it is a perverse moral hazard. The incentives and distortions, it is terrible. And, of course, it is one of the reasons that, when the euro was first launched, I was very skeptical, and I thought that eventually the euro would collapse. And I still think that eventually the euro will collapse. I just think it's not going to happen for a while. I think the dollar is in more acute trouble, and I think the dollar's days are numbered to a fewer number than the euro's. And ultimately, I think the problems with the dollar are going to give the euro a reprieve, and that the euro will survive for a while longer. But I think ultimately it is going to be very problematic, given the political nature of the beast over there, and the political nature anywhere. But I would personally like to see the European Union do the right thing, just because I want governments to do the right thing no matter where they are. I'd like our government to do the right thing. But if our government can't do the right thing, well, let's at least see some governments doing the right thing. Even if doing the right thing might mean in the short run, they might have a little bit more pain. Certainly if they have a bailout for Greece, my guess is that will send the stock markets up. That will probably send the euro up. But in the long run, the euro is better off if they don't do that. Also one of the bills that was I guess it's through the House of Representatives now, and it hasn't made it through the Senate yet. So it's we don't know that it's going to be passed, but it's a jobs bill. And the president in his State of the Union address, I mean, he challenged the Congress, put a jobs bill on my desk. I need a jobs bill. And of course, this is so the president can pretend that he cares about the unemployed and that he's going to create jobs, as if jobs are created by passing bills. I mean, they're not. I mean, we've passed all kinds of bills, and look at all the unemployed people. The truth of the matter is, jobs are destroyed when governments pass bills. The way we create jobs is to try to repeal a lot of the bills that have already been passed that have created the roadblocks that prevent jobs from coming into existence, and that have undermined and distorted our economy, and are a source of all these misallocations. And of course, we have unemployment is a surplus of workers, and it's created by government policy. And we need to remove the policies that have led to this surplus of people looking for work, or the other way to look at it, a shortage of jobs. None of this happens in nature. In a free market, the market's clear, and everybody who wants a job has a job, and that's the way it would work. Of course, markets might have to adjust. Wages might have to decline. If there's too many people unemployed, it generally means wages are too high and they have to come down. Now, a lot of people don't like that, but that's what has to happen. But of course, if the government allowed other prices to fall, see, it's not just wages that are too high. A lot of prices are too high for a lot of things. College tuitions are too high. Real estate prices are too high. Medical costs are too high. All these things would come down in tandem if the government got out of the way. And so just because people's wages are coming down, it doesn't mean that they're going to live a worse life. If housing costs come down, if education costs come down, and if healthcare costs come down, maybe all those things come down faster than wages, and your real wages actually go up, and you're better off. But, the government is not allowing market mechanisms to correct these imbalances, and so the imbalances get bigger and bigger and bigger. But what they're coming up with now, of course, is a gimmick. And this jobs bill is full of gimmicks, and the centerpiece, big gimmick of them all, is the payroll tax holiday, where if you hire somebody who has been unemployed for 2 months, so you can't hire somebody that just lost their job, and you can't hire somebody who already has a job. You can't try to offer somebody who has a job a better job. You have to hire somebody who's unemployed and who has been unemployed for 2 months. But if you do that, then for the remainder of 2010, you do not have to pay the employer's share of the Social Security payroll tax. And of course, if you keep that person employed for the entire year, I think you get like an extra $1,000 or something like that at the back end. And this, of course, is going to be to create a lot of jobs, to help small businesses create jobs. Now, look, I'm all in favor of reducing taxes on small business, but this is not the way to go about it. And of course, the vast majority of the jobs that are going to be impacted by this payroll tax holiday are going to be the jobs that would have been created anyway, that would have been created even without the payroll tax holiday, because the majority of the jobs are going to be for, to turnover. I mean, there is a natural turnover in the economy. People quit all the time. People are fired, and then new people are hired to replace them. It's those replacement workers where the employer is going to get the benefit, because the jobs, the bill says that you can hire workers to replace workers that you fire for cause or that quit. And so that's really what's going to happen. And it's simply going to be a loss of revenue to the government. Now, I like the fact that the lost revenue is going to be a positive for small business, because the money that the government doesn't get, small businesses are going to get. But the problem is the government's still going to get the money because they're not cutting spending. So what the government's going to have to do is borrow the money that they're not taxing small business. But what is that going to do? Well, that's going to crowd out capital, crowd out investment that small business now is not going to have access to. So what the government gives with one hand, they take it away with the other. So the net, I don't think, is going to be a benefit to small business. I think it's going to be a wash or maybe a slight negative, but it's not going to create jobs. Now, the government's going to claim credit, because I'm sure that by the end of the year, there'll be a lot of workers where the employer is not having to pay the payroll tax, and the government will say, you see, look at all these jobs we created. But, of course, those jobs would have existed anyway, because if people quit, well, you were going to hire a replacement. If you fired somebody because they weren't doing a good job, you would replace them with somebody who you thought would do a better job. That happens all the time. But now, of course, the government's going to be able to take credit for jobs that would have existed. Now, the one, real negative, I think, about this for certain people is that employers now have more of an incentive to fire somebody for cause than they would absent this bill, because they know and hire somebody else that they are going to get a reduction in their payroll. And where I think this might be the most the most beneficial to an employer would be somebody that runs, let's say, a fast food restaurant, where you have a lot of workers, minimum wage type workers, where it's very low skill. You can teach them the job in a couple of hours and put them to work, to the extent that they can replace their current workforce with a new workforce. If they got a large enough payroll, it's a pretty decent savings, across the entire payroll. So certainly if you work in a fast food industry, if you're a young kid at minimum wage, you might have to, really be careful, not to call in sick, or, not to show up late, or not to be caught, sending an email, because your employer might be looking for the slightest reason to fire you, because he knows if he fires you, he can hire somebody cheaper, because he'll be able to get the tax break. But as far as this bill creating jobs that wouldn't have existed absent this job, I just don't see it happening. I don't see that a 1-year reduction. Of course, it's not a permanent payroll tax holiday. It's just for the rest of 2010. So imagine if you're a small business and you're not hiring somebody right now because you can't afford to hire anybody. You don't need anybody. Well, the government says, well, if you hire somebody, you can get a 6% reduction in how much you have to pay them. So instead of having to pay somebody $30,000 a year, you only have to pay them $28,600 a year. Is that going to suddenly make the difference? Oh my God, I only have to pay $28,600. Oh shoot, I'll go out and hire somebody right now. I just thought I was going to have to pay $30,000. Is it possible that there could be a job where that small amount of money for 1 year might be the balance that tips it into a decision? I suppose it's possible, right? It's possible that this bill could create a couple of jobs. But I don't see that for many people. In fact, I think that if there really is a situation where I'm a small businessman and I really need to hire somebody, but I can't pay somebody $30,000, it only works at $28,500. With all these people unemployed, I'm sure I can get somebody to give me the 6% deal on their own without the government giving me the incentive. I'm sure one of the unemployed people would say, you know what, I'll take a 6% pay cut, hire me. So, I don't think this is going to do anything. Again, it lets our politicians stand up there on Capitol Hill and pretend that they're doing something, pretend that they give a damn, when the fact is millions and millions of people are unemployed or underemployed, and more people are going to lose their jobs because these guys in Washington are completely incompetent. They are destroying this economy. They are destroying jobs. And until we change Congress, until we change the White House, this is not going to change. They can pass all the jobs bills they want, and they're going to keep destroying job after job after job, and more people are going to be unemployed despite how many jobs they claim to have saved with their programs. Anyway, let me take a look at the boards and see the callers. They're starting to build up. Let me quickly skip out of line. I've got one international caller from Denmark, so let me pick him up. Is that Yannick?
Yeah.
Hey, Yannick,
hi,
you're on the air. Hey, how are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm a student in Denmark, college student, and I was wondering if I always wanted to work, help your campaign, but I can't donate. So I was wondering, do you mind if foreigners make calls for you on your call program thing?
Yeah, there's nothing that prohibits foreigners
no,
from
but
volunteering.
I think from a political standpoint, if people saw some foreigners, making political changes in the country, somewhat might be offended.
Yeah, you don't know. Obviously, you've got a pretty big accent, so everybody is going to know that you're probably not American. But I think, you could certainly disclose that, you're a Danish citizen, and, you wish that, there was somebody like Peter Schiff, running for office in your country. And, I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. Because there's no rules that prohibit. Foreigners can fly to Connecticut and volunteer to, knock on doors, or, they can help. They can help. I think, I get the same criticism. The Hartford Courant ran an article recently because, I have to disclose my fundraising. And that the overwhelming majority, I think they only found 70 or 80 of my contributors. And I have, 15, 16,000 contributors. And I was surprised myself that we didn't get more contributors from Connecticut. Although we haven't sent out any traditional fundraising yet, emails. We're going to eventually do that. I'm going to eventually hit up Connecticut Republicans for money, and then those numbers will change. Right now, I'm just asking for money, in general. And some of my supporters happen to live in Connecticut. Most of them don't. Connecticut's a small state, and I guess, there's not as many. I think most of the people who follow me proportionately are in states like California, Texas, New York, and so that's where most of my money is coming. And so people criticize me because I'm getting money from out of state. But the thing is, I'm not getting money from out of state big businesses or corporations or special interest PACs. I'm getting money from ordinary American citizens, from blue-collar workers, from students, from people who are unemployed. They don't represent any special interest. They just represent concerned Americans who are frustrated with what's happening in Washington and who think that I'm the guy to go there and put a stop to it. They believe in the Constitution. They believe in capitalism. They believe in individual liberty. And they know that I believe in those things too, and so they support me. And I think that it's important not just to Connecticut, but to the entire country that we elect people to the United States Senate that share this. And I also think it's important to the entire world. I can see where people in other countries want America to succeed, want America to be what it was and all that it could be, want America to set a good example for the world, just like I want other countries to do the right thing. I always give advice. If any country in the world asks me, what should we do? I would tell them what to do. I want countries to succeed. I want people to prosper all around the world. And, everybody benefits when people succeed. Everybody benefits from freedom because the more people in the world are free, the more people are working, the more people who are inventing things, the more people who are going to come up with a better mousetrap, the more people that might come up with a cure for cancer. The more people around the world that are free, the more prosperous the world is going to be. And so the fact that somebody in Denmark is enthusiastic about my campaign and would like to see me win. Personally, I don't think that's a negative thing, but I'm sure there'll be, my opponents in the election that will find a way to spin it as a positive thing. I mean, but everything that I do, anything that I say is going to be spun against me and used against me. That's how politics works. Because the unfortunate thing is most of the people who I'm running against, I don't think they really care about the country. They care about themselves. They care about their own careers. And all they want to do is they want to win. And they don't care what they do to win. They just want to discredit me and make me out to be the bad guy so that they can win. And, that's not why I'm in the race. I'm in the race because, I understand the problems that the country is facing. And I don't see anybody else that does and that is willing to devote the time necessary to solve them. I mean, I wish that Congress would invite me to testify. I wish senators would call me up and ask for my advice, but none of them do. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter how often I'm right. It doesn't matter what I put down in writing. Nobody in Washington gives a damn what Peter Schiff says. And the only thing I can think of is, well, maybe if I was a senator, they would. Maybe they would listen. Maybe I'd get a few ears. I mean, I'd be in the same building. I can walk down the door. I can knock on someone's door or just open it up. And, can they really, ignore me if I'm a member of the club? I don't know. Maybe they will. But, I'm trying my best. But anyway.
But also, Peter, if now my country is starting to run at 20 billion deficit, the deficit is 20 billion. And I was running. How does a poor student like me, start buying like gold and start protecting?
Well, I'm sure there are places. In Denmark. Were you in Copenhagen?
Not that close, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's. Look, I'm sure there are plenty of places that sell gold. I mean, you can still buy. I sell gold. Through Perth Mint right now, and we're I've said this many times. Euro-Pacific Precious Metals is very close to opening up, but we'll be selling precious metals, and I have plenty of foreign customers, but I'm sure you can find somebody closer to home. But if you can't, I mean, you can certainly contact us.
So how much would you need to start at? How much?
Well, with the Perth Mint certificate program, I think the minimum is either 5,000 or 10,000. I think it's 10,000 minimum U.S. to get started, and then I think increments of 5,000. Once I'm not sure what my minimum at Euro Pacific coins might be. It might be $5,000 or something. I'm not sure for an initial purchase. I don't know. But if you want to buy even smaller amounts than that, I mean, there are local coin dealers that'll have bullion. They'll have coins. They'll have bars that you can buy.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for the call. And again, do whatever you want. I'm not encouraging or discouraging people from around the world from helping out, as I said. But, I think that I'm running, not just for the people of Connecticut. I'm running for the people of the United States. And in many cases, I could be running for the world because these issues that I believe in are not only important to Connecticut, but they are important to the United States, and they're important to people who love freedom and love free markets everywhere in the world. We need to stand up for those principles. Anyway, next up is Anthony in Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Anthony.
Peter. Thanks for taking my call. This is more of an unconventional question that you may receive, but of all your listeners out there, I think I'm speaking for all of us. And between the businesses that you run, your political run here, all the DO blog, and trying to maintain your family life as well, what is your motivation and essentially that? What is your motivation? How do you come up with it every day?
My motivation for what?
For doing all the things you do.
Well, I mean, first of all, you can look at what is my motivation for running my business, running Euro Pacific Capital. I mean, obviously I'm motivated because I earn a good living, and everybody is motivated to work because of the income. But it's more than just the income. I mean, I certainly take pride in what I'm doing. I get a sense of accomplishment from building a company, from watching it grow. I am happy to be helping people, to be educating people. I mean, that's not necessarily my primary motivation, but it is certainly a positive. I certainly enjoy the fact that I'm able to do that. I enjoy the fact that not only am I helping investors to achieve, I think, a better return than they might have had absent my advice, but I'm also influencing young people. I get a kick, and I know I'm not answering my emails anymore. I mean, I do occasionally. I used to answer them all. Now I just get so many I can't. But you know what? I read them all, unless they're really too long, and then I kind of skim them. I mean, so if you send me 3 pages to read, there's a good chance I'm not going to read it. If you send me a paragraph or 2, I will. But I mean, I like it. I mean, I get some very motivational or inspirational, emails from people in the United States and around the world, and I get a kick out of the fact that people all around the world are reading my stuff, are watching me on YouTube or listening to this radio show. I mean, I think, it's difficult even to have imagined, 10 or 15 years ago, even before the internet, that so many people around the world would even know who I was, and the fact that I'm influencing in what I believe is a positive way, the way they think and the way they look at the world, and so that's positive feedback, and so that motivates me. As far as why am I running for office? I mean, it's on the chance that I could actually positively impact the course that our country is on. I mean, I've watched the country, I've watched our leaders make one mistake after another. And I've known about the mistakes, and I continue to watch it, and I do what I can to try to invest based on the damage that they're doing to our economy and to our currency. But would I prefer to prevent them from making these mistakes so that I could invest in a different way? Absolutely. But up until now, I've had no control, and I still have no control. But the prospect of actually doing something, of actually playing a meaningful role in changing the direction and restoring our country, given the sacrifices that our founding fathers made hundreds of years ago, given the sacrifices that many Americans have made over the generations to fight for the country and to preserve the country, I think I owe it to them. I think I owe it to a future generation of Americans. And so that, that motivates me, and so I think it's the same things that motivate most people, and again, if I didn't, get enjoyment from what I'm doing and satisfaction, because I don't have a lot of leisure right now. I mean, I'm always doing stuff, but fortunately, it's not tedious to me. It's not really work, because I think I'm accomplishing things and I get satisfaction out of that. I mean, some people, I think I have it much easier than people who work at more mundane jobs that they don't like, or they can't wait till the quitting time when they can run and do something that they do enjoy, because I do enjoy what I'm doing, and so I think I'm fortunate in that respect.
Absolutely, and you're motivating what is essentially the democracy, which is the people. And it's not what you necessarily do in office or your business, but it's the people you affect and touch on an everyday basis that is really making a change. And I'm one of those people, and I just want to thank you for what you do and what you're going to do, and you have a lot of people behind you.
Yeah, and I know it's going to be difficult in politics, because I'm not a natural politician, because a politician, is basically says what the people want to hear. He's willing to compromise his principles to get elected. He puts his own interests above the country's interests, and none of that is me. I never want to sugarcoat my message. I want to tell people exactly what I think about every issue, and if they don't like me, they don't like me. And that's been my approach to running my business. I mean, I say what I think, and the people who don't like it, they don't work with me. They don't do business with me. I don't care about them. I care about the people who do agree with what I'm saying and who want to do business with me. Unfortunately, in politics, you're supposed to care about everybody, because you have to get their votes. You have to get a majority of the votes to win. See, I don't need to convince a majority of Americans that I'm right to be successful as a businessman. If I just get 1% of the investors to think I'm right and send me their money, I'm a huge success. But if I just get 1% of the vote, I mean, I'm an abysmal failure. So, I'm not naturally cut out for politics, but hopefully the times are so different that we're at a point in our history that the public is so tired of politicians because of the mess that they made, that maybe the fact that I don't do that and that I don't play that game will be enough for people to put their faith in me and actually elect me. Anyway, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, I got one more international caller, so let me take a quick skip to, is that Mac in Brazil?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you. And first of all, congratulations again for the set of values you defend. This is very beautiful to hear from an American, a patriot, defending the core values and trying to change the organizational culture in Washington, the sacrifice, etc. This is really deserves our full support and our best. Let's say, congratulations for you, first of all.
Thank
Peter,
you. Do you have a question?
Okay. Yeah, the question is, I was discussing with an engineer. I am also engineer, electronic engineer, researcher, and I was discussing in the dinner with an old friend that I met 45 years ago. I am 60, and he was responsible for me to follow the electronic carrier. And I was discussing with him about the main culprits of the tragedy that happened in the United States, the financial tragedy, the crisis. My question is, I read Meltdown, I read good sources about, but in two words, in your opinion, who was the main culprit? I said to him that was the government, the American government, the policy of Greenspan.
Yeah, well, did you read my book Crash Proof?
That's the problem. Unfortunately, I had no time. I had no opportunity to read. But
if you read, try to pick up a copy. But if you want to have one person, the one person that I would lay the most amount of blame as one single person, and that would be Alan Greenspan. He was the person that was in the position to do the right thing, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
He's the one man that had control of the monetary presses. He could have raised interest rates, and he did not do that. He lowered them, and he kept them low, and he facilitated all of the reckless speculation that went on. Now, obviously, he had help. He wasn't the only culprit, but if you want to find the single biggest one, it's him. Now, there are other people in Congress that played a big role in the things that they did, like here in Connecticut, Christopher Dodd, and he's not the only one. You got Barney Frank in the House. I think George Bush was culpable, and his what he encouraged us to do with his bully pulpit on encouraging us to go out and spend and borrow and go into debt. But and of course there were people on Wall Street, who under the influence of that cheap money went for the quick buck and and didn't do what was right. So there are a lot of culprits. But of course, unfortunately, our leaders learned very little from that crisis, which is why they're repeating all the mistakes that created it in the first place, which is why I'm convinced that an even greater crisis awaits us in the very near future. Anyway, thanks a lot, Mac. I appreciate your call from Brazil.
Okay, Peter. Thank you very much.
Next up, a little closer to home, one of my potential constituents, Bob, in Connecticut. Go ahead, Bob.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good. Are you one of the 70 or 80 people in Connecticut who donated to my campaign?
I am. I'm proud to say that I have, and I want you to come visit the northeastern part of the state and campaign in here because I want you to be our next senator.
All right. Well, try to encourage, some of your friends and associates to, check out my website at shifforsenate.com and, make a donation. Tomorrow night, weather permitting, if they don't cancel it, I'm speaking at Enfield Republican Town Committee. And earlier than that, I got a meet and greet that I'm doing at Russo's I guess is that a restaurant or something in Enfield. So I'll be there at 5:30, and then I have the RTC meeting at 7.
Outstanding. Well, we look forward to you being our junior senator from the state. Peter, my question is, what are the reliable periodicals to understand what is truly happening versus what the media tries to spin, what do you rely on to understand what is happening both in the economy and day-to-day news? I'm interested.
Well,
very
I don't
much.
rely on anybody. I rely on myself. I mean, I get the news, so I hear what's going on television news, whether it's the financial news like a CNBC or Fox News, or I read in the internet, I Google, I go on Bloomberg, I Google keywords, I try to see what's going on. I'll go to like the New York Times online or some of these and see some of the stories that are there. But I go to the media to get the facts. I formulate my own opinion as to what those facts mean. I mean, I don't look for I don't read anybody else to try to come to my understanding. And I encourage, if people really want to have a good understanding of what's going on, to read my stuff, to read the commentaries I write once a week, to come listen to my radio show, to listen to my video blogs, because I think that if you're looking for some type of explanation of what's going on, I think my take on it is going to be better than what you're going to get in most conventional media. Now, I'm not the only one. I mean, there are other people out there who understand what's going on, and I'm certainly not the only person.
Understood. Well, I appreciate all you do. You obviously have my vote. You've had my support from very early on, and I really want you to be senator from my state. Just by coincidence, I've been a fan anyway, but I really hope that we can do everything we can to get you elected to the United States Senate. Thank you so much.
Well, appreciate it. And again, anybody who wants to donate, it's shiftforsenate.com is the campaign website. And any donation helps, no matter how small, particularly you guys in Connecticut who are listening. If you haven't donated, donate something, even if it's $5 or $10. So the next time they look at the donations from Connecticut, we'll have a few more of you guys there. And so it will look like I do have some support in the state. Anyway, next caller is going to be Gail in New Mexico.
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Gail?
I'm well. Thank you for taking my call. I've been a client of yours for a couple of years and have also listened to the program for a couple of years. My question this evening, if you could just address it and then I'll hang up, has to do with possible usurping of the government of our IRA or 401k plans. I've got control over mine. I manage my own, but I know this has happened in Argentina, and I know that there was a congresswoman from the East Coast, I believe, about a year and a half ago that proposed that the government take control over people's IRAs or 401ks since we didn't know how to do it ourselves. What would we be looking for in advance to move our money? I'm way too young to cash out, though I'm seriously thinking about it just because I really don't want the government controlling
I think that there is certainly a possibility. Obviously anything would in that area would be unconstitutional, but of course the Constitution doesn't stop the government from doing all sorts of things, so why should exactly. It apply here? So, and I think the government looks at IRAs in a way as if it's their money, because after all, the money that we put in there, we didn't have to pay in taxes. And so the government kind of feels that it's, whatever they let us keep is actually their money, because the only reason we have that IRA is because they didn't take the money from us in taxes. And since they thought they were entitled to it, they might be able to rationalize the fact that, well, it's really the government's money. And, but, one of the things they might do with IRAs would be in conjunction with some kind of a reform of Social Security, which, I can mention now. I think I mentioned on my video blog, but Social Security is now running a deficit for the first time since 1982 because there's so many people who are now unemployed and who are not paying Social Security taxes. And, of course, this payroll tax holiday is going to exacerbate that problem. The Social Security is actually paying out more in benefits right now than it's collecting in taxes. So this is a major disaster coming. And so one potential government fix might be to try to means test the Social Security. And for people who have their own IRAs, they might say, well, if you're able to draw down an IRA, then we might, not give you the full Social Security benefit because we might offset it with what you're distributing from your IRA, or try to combine IRAs with Social Security and look at it as one thing. Another thing they might do is try to take control of the investment decisions. They might say, well, people aren't smart enough to make their own investments. They're getting scammed. They're losing their money. So let's make sure that all IRAs are invested in U.S. government bonds. After all, those are the safest investments in the world. Now, they might be doing that to force Americans to buy government bonds because, of course, they're running up a huge deficit and they need people to buy them. And so they might try to use our IRAs as a way to force us to buy government bonds. Of course, they'll say they're doing it for our own good because, after all, government bonds are so much safer than the stocks that people are buying. They might rationalize it based on the fact that it's an IRA and they have some kind of control over it because, after all, it's their money that they're letting us have.
Aren't we lucky?
But, as of now, as far as I know, there are no plans to do anything. I think it's just rumor, and, so I don't know. I mean, it is a pretty bad thing. And I would imagine there would be enough real opposition that they would have a hard time getting something like that through, even the Congress they have now. Look, they couldn't even get health care through. And, I think something like that would be even more unpopular than this health care reform. So, I think the good news is it's probably not going to happen. But, if things got bad enough that we had exchange controls and the whole country is falling apart, you see, one of the reasons that our government likes, chaos, they like problems and they like unemployment and they like all this, poverty is because they can grab more power. Because the government thrives on that environment, because they can ride to the rescue. They can claim to be our salvation. Just give up more of your rights, give government more power, and we're going to solve your problems. And that is the problem that we face, because the more individual liberties we surrender so that the government can solve our problems, not only do we lose our liberties, but the problems actually get bigger.
Right. I think if you read some of Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, they speak to that exact
well, those
situation.
Sentiments have been spoken by very, very smart men, much smarter than me, for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And, they were saying these things for a reason. And, history repeats itself over and over and over again, and it's amazing how often it does. And, the things that really amaze me as a human being is, we have advanced dramatically in terms of our technology, right? We have incredible advancements in all sorts of things. This internet radio show is certainly an example of technological advancement. But in other ways, we haven't advanced at all. In human nature, in our understanding of economics, in our understanding of government, we're no better off than we were 200 years ago, 300 years ago. In many cases, we're worse off. We haven't learned anything. In science, every generation learns from the previous generation, and nothing that was learned is forgotten. It's like we're constantly building on our knowledge base. But when it comes to economics and politics, every generation has to learn from the start. We start all over again as if we've learned nothing, because nobody learns anything from history. And it really is amazing that's how it works.
But don't you think a lot of that's because a lot of politics is built on our weaknesses and our passions? And that's what a lot of politicians...
That's true. And I guess, for all of our technology, we're still the same human beings.
Yes,
our brains are the same size. We're no more intelligent. I don't think the IQs are higher today than they were hundreds of years ago. We have more science and we have more gadgets and stuff, but basic human nature and human frailty, we haven't improved on that model. Mm-hmm. And so,
Well, Peter, I wish you great luck, and we'll be watching everything that goes on with you. And thanks again.
Okay, thank you very much for your call.
Okay.
Next up, it's not the last caller, but the last caller who has been patiently waiting now for 40 minutes, so I got to give you kudos for that, is Andrew in Wisconsin. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, hi, thanks. Well, I wanted to follow up on a caller's comments a couple weeks ago, I think, about campaign contributions and that recent Supreme Court ruling which allows corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money to influence campaigns. And you had mentioned that you supported that idea, and I guess I'm just wondering, how do you go about supporting that idea when you look around and see how all these companies, the Goldman Sachs, the General Motors, gain influence in government through spending money on lobbyists and all these other things?
It's not about – the idea is, though, not about how it's impacting the elections. It's whether or not the Constitution – allows individuals or corporations to express themselves by, through advertisement. This is not a coordinated effort with the corporation and a candidate. But if the corporation or an individual, for that matter, happens to believe in a particular candidate and they want to, on their own expense, produce an ad and run an ad for that candidate, they should. It seems to me that their freedoms allow them to do that. Now, I don't think now if you want to talk about, well, is it good or bad for the country? Well, that's a second issue. Just because the Supreme Court thinks it's bad for the country to let that happen, see, that's judicial activism. I don't want justices making decisions based on what they think is good or bad. I want them making decisions based on what the law says, what the Constitution says. But, when it comes right down to it, the Congress is so bad right now that it can't possibly get worse. Allowing more corporations to make these donations. I mean, you're going to say we've got this great government right now, and this is going to screw it up? I mean, my gut is that maybe it'll improve it. Maybe some corporations will run ads for somebody like me. Maybe there's wealthy individuals around the world. Right now, if you're a really wealthy individual and you really want to make a difference, the only way you can do it is by running yourself. So if, a guy like Bill Gates, if he just said, look, I think the country's in trouble and I really want to help, if he'd have to run for office himself. He can't run an ad for $10 million for somebody. But, maybe a guy like that, maybe there's a really wealthy person somewhere who really believes in what I'm saying and doesn't want to run themselves, doesn't want to disrupt their own life. But you know what? They might go and produce a Peter Schiff ad and run it in Connecticut. And maybe it'll help me win. Who knows? It can't be any worse than it is right now. I think we got a crappy system. I think it guarantees that the worst possible people constantly get reelected.
Why allow outside money at all to play a part in campaigns?
Because it's part of freedom of speech.
Well,
you speak with money. Your right to speak is influenced by right now is I got to get on television. People listen to television, they listen to radio. I can speak, I can extend my voice. And if it costs money to extend my voice, if I have to spend money in order to speak, then the government can't interfere with that spending money because they're limiting my freedom of speech. And I think it was a good decision. And, whether or not it's going to, make it better or worse, I don't know. My gut is that it's actually going to lead to some improvement because I think it can't get any worse than it is right now. But I understand your perspective, and it's certainly possible that you're right. But I think that the First Amendment principle, I wish that the Supreme Court would apply the Constitution that way in other areas as well and strike down all sorts. If the Supreme Court was doing its job, it wouldn't even matter how much money was in politics, because almost everything that the special interest agenda is pushing is unconstitutional. And if the Supreme Court simply enforced the Constitution, then none of this crap would happen anyway. Excuse my language.
Well, I'd say what you're doing right now is speech, but I'd say money is basically power and control. But that aside, then this opens up the whole door to should companies that accepted TARP money then be allowed to spend whatever they want?
Well, here's the problem. You have a problem with two wrongs making a right. I don't think the government should have given anybody TARP money.
Well, right,
but
and I know you view that.
But I would say yes. If a company is taking money from the government, they shouldn't be able to turn around and use that money to run campaign ads for the people who gave them the money. So maybe there could be an exemption for, but then you could say, well, any company that has a tax break, any company that takes a tax credit, can't make a contribution. So it's just a big slippery slope. But I just wish we would go after the TARP rather than the political contributions. But I know, look, I have sympathy for some of the things that you're saying. Anyway, thanks for the call. Let me hop because I've got a couple more callers on the line. Next up is going to be Ryan in Massachusetts. Go ahead, Ryan. And let's make this. I have one more call on hold. So if you're not on hold right now, don't bother calling because we only have 10 minutes left. Anyway, go ahead, Ryan.
Hi. Right across the border, and I just want to say I got my sister and her brother-in-law on board on the Peter Schiff campaign in Somers, Connecticut. My question is this, though. I understand your point of view, and I actually agree with a lot of them in terms of investing, and I've been following the inflation-deflation debate. And I noticed on your reading list you have several books by Robert Prechter, who's probably the complete opposite in terms of, your thinking. So, and I know you guys cross paths at some money shows, but I'm curious why you have deflationist-based books on your...
Well, you have to understand that deflation is what is happening, right? Whenever you have an inflationary boom, you have a deflationary bust. So deflation is what the economy needs. Deflation, is going to help solve our problem. But the politicians will not allow deflation. Now, in the past, if you're on a gold standard, then they can't stop deflation. It happens, okay? But when you're on a fiat standard, like the one that we have right now, they can stop deflation from happening from the perspective of the U.S. dollar, which they're debasing. They can't stop the deflationary process from happening in real terms, in terms of gold. So I agree with Prechter's principle that we have massive deflation. I am just viewing my deflation through the spectrum of gold. So I expect prices for everything to fall in terms of gold. And there's going to be a massive deflation. But I also expect the dollar to fall faster than most assets. So if you're measuring prices with dollars of diminishing value, then it's going to appear as if there's inflation, even though there's actually deflation. And if the government cranks it up to its ultimate degree, you have hyperinflation. And for example, you have hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, where prices are running through the roof, but if you measure Zimbabwe prices in gold, you actually have deflation. Even though there is hyperinflation in terms of paper currency, there is deflation in terms of real money. And I think that's going to happen. I think, when you look at the market, all there is right now is a tug-of-war between inflation and deflation. Whenever you see stocks going down, it's because people are afraid of deflation. Stocks are going down, commodities are going down, gold is going down, and the dollar is going up. It always happens at the same time. Then, when stocks are going up, it's because people are worried about inflation, because stocks are going up, gold is going up, commodities are going up, and the dollar is going down. It's this constant tug-of-war between worrying about inflation and worrying about deflation. But that's all there is worries. The market is never going up because of optimism. You're either worried about inflation or you're worried about deflation. But I think that the people who are worried about deflation in terms of prices going down relative to U.S. currency, they are wrong. I think prices have to go up because the Fed is determined to not let them fall. And they have the printing press. Ben Bernanke said it himself in the speech that he earned his moniker, Helicopter Ben, that they can always generate a positive level of inflation because they can print money like crazy. And I'm taking him at his word that that's what he's going to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Last call today is going to be Stephen from California. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, Peter, real quick. I was in a debate with another Republican, and his argument first and my argument back. He was saying you had an inherent conflict of interest with your business and your stated goal as senator. That is, if you're successful as senator, the very niche of Euro-Pacific capital would be out of business in the sense that it's basically survives on the fact of the current bad malinvest investment. And my argument back to him was that maybe you could create an American opportunity or capital company.
You've answered your own question. I mean, basically, I'm an investment advisor. So my job is to give people investment advice. Now, as it so happens right now, because Washington is doing everything wrong, right? They are undermining our economy and destroying our currency. The advice I have to give is to protect yourself from that, is to get out of dollars, to get out of U.S. assets. If I can be successful at turning those policies around, instead of pursuing reckless monetary policies, if we can pursue sound monetary policies, if instead of chasing capital out of the country, we can pursue policies that will entice capital into the country, if we can cut spending, if we can turn America into the best emerging market, then all I do is give different advice. I'm still a brokerage firm. I'm just giving advice. I'm telling people what to do. Believe me, I would much rather be telling people about the incredible opportunity to profit from the booming American economy, because we've finally done it right. We got our act together. We've got a balanced budget. We've got sound money. We're deregulating. We're cutting taxes. This is the opportunity. I would love to take every dollar I have in foreign assets and bring them back and invest it right here. I'll make a fortune. In fact, if you think about the fact that I generate a lot of commissions when we sell stuff, if we ever get stuff going right in America, I make more money from that scenario than perpetuating the decline. So, it doesn't hurt my business. It simply changes the message that I give. But the message is, it's the same business. It's helping people invest their money. And I can tell people to invest in the growing American economy just as easily as I can tell them to avoid the collapsing American economy.
Yeah, but then you're going to have to call it Patriot Capital, American Patriot Capital, rather than Europe.
I don't know. Europe Pacific. I mean, I named it Europe Pacific because I was in the Pacific in California. So I don't necessarily have to change the name. I mean, look, I'm always going to be global. I don't think I'm going to be 100. Even if America does everything right, I doubt we're going to be 100%. I mean, we'll have some international exposure. So I'm going to have international clientele hopefully, and I'll have international offices. But the thing is, Euro Pacific Capital doesn't exist to sell foreign stocks, and that's all we can do. Euro Pacific Capital exists so that I can help people invest their money in the most profitable places that I can find. And if because of policies in Washington, I find it more profitable to invest in foreign markets, then that's where I'm going to invest. But if those policies change and it's better to invest here, then that's where I'm going to invest. And a lot of it is also about valuation. I mean, it's certainly if U.S. stocks got cheap enough, even if things still look kind of bleak, I might take a chance. But right now, if you look at most U.S. stocks of quality U.S. companies and you look at their P/E ratios, they are historically very high. If you look at the dividend yields, they're historically very low. U.S. stocks as a group are still expensive. So, I don't want to buy things that are expensive. I want to buy things that are cheap. And right now, things are cheaper in other markets. And so that's, another reason that I'm there.
Yeah, I would probably say that maybe what is going to rejuvenate the United States is maybe have a division where you hunt out new companies that will be not that will be filling in.
And meanwhile, one thing that I'm doing, everybody said, well, it's hurting the U.S. because we're investing abroad. What we're doing is I'm helping Americans acquire foreign assets. What that does is it reduces our current account deficit because that's money coming back. That's euros coming to America. That's yen coming to America. That's Australian dollars coming to America, being paid to Americans. The fact that Americans are taking ownership of foreign assets is a positive thing for our balance of payment. It's better than foreigners coming over here and buying up our stuff. This is Americans going. We're going here and buying up some of their stuff. So it's a positive for us to have overseas assets. Hello.
Yeah. I appreciate what you're saying. I think that I think what you'll see is trying to eventually, if we need to invest in the companies here that aren't the big guys, the fat ones that need to disappear, but the new companies that'll even be more streamlined in spite of the government.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I said, we just finished a partnership. We invested a lot of Euro Pacific Capital money up in the Balkans, drilling for oil. And so that's, a big chunk of money that we put into an American company, drilling oil wells in the United States. So, there are some opportunities here and, I do avail myself of them. But in general, too, most people that come to Euro Pacific Capital send me their money to invest abroad. Domestically, they leave with other brokers, but the money that they want international is the money they generally send me. Anyway, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Again, anybody who wants to learn about Euro Pacific Capital, learn about foreign investing, of course, make sure you know that there are a lot of risks investing in international, just like there are risks investing domestically. But call up my company, 800-727-7922, 800-727-7922. Visit our website at www.europac.net. Download some of the research reports, read my articles, make sure to pick up a copy of Crash Proof 2.0 if you haven't already read the book. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, everybody. I will be back hopefully again next Wednesday. Again, my political calendar is always full, and you never know, but I try my best to do this show every Wednesday. It's Wall Street Unspun, Midweek Market Outlook. Again, this is Peter Schiff, host of the show, president of Euro Pacific Capital, and, of course, a Senate candidate in the Republican Party in the great state of Connecticut. Again, thanks, everybody. Enjoy your evening. I will be back again next time. Take care.